Hello everyone, I'm James Avery, and today I'm giving a speech titled No Safe Space, Gender-Based Violence and Its Effects on Transgender Individuals. I'm excited about having the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. When I was 22, I was in a relationship with an abusive transphobic individual while coming to terms with my own identity as transgendered. While I was never beaten up when I brought up bits about my identity, I hid it because he had attempted to kill other people he was close to for things he would have viewed as lesser sins. I lived in constant fear of violence about my gender identity, and had trouble, even a year after the relationship ended, seeing my transgender identity as anything other than a literal death sentence. I still struggle with the fear of violence from people who discover my gender identity. I've been terrified to come out, and terrified of people finding out, and I've had a number of bad reactions, but luckily I've had a number of good ones as well. I'm going to talk to you today about physical and sexual gender-based violence and its effects on transgender individuals. The story I told you from my life illustrates the effect that even a threat of violence had on my life, my ability to come to terms with my gender, and my feeling of security and desire to survive. When that violence is not just a threat, but a reality, the effect is much greater. In addition to being transgender myself, I've written papers and given speeches on transgender issues, and I am studying to become a consulting workplace diversity trainer on transgender issues in the workplace. I will be discussing how the abnormally high levels of physical and sexual gender-based violence that occurs to transgenders in the individuals in the United States results in higher incidences of suicide attempts, leads to a number of transgender individuals not completing high school, and creates fear of reporting incidences of gender-based violence. Learning how physical and sexual gender-based violence affects transgender individuals is important because it's a hugely pervasive issue. 38% of transgender individuals that participated in the massive Virginia Transgender Health Initiative study experienced physical violence because of their gender identity. That's over 1 in 3. 26.6% of participants experienced sexual violence due to their gender identity, over 1 in 4. The instigators of both types of violence range from family members, to police, to complete strangers. Even if you wouldn't cause those kinds of violence, the awareness of its pervasiveness and effects can help you identify when someone has undergone such violence and possibly save their life. The high incidences of suicide in trans individuals who experience gender-based violence are astonishing. They were 4 times as likely to try to commit suicide than transgender individuals who had not experienced gender-based violence. Of those who attempted suicide, approximately 2/3 attempted 2 or more times. These statistics are from the study mentioned earlier. In veterans with an official diagnosis of gender identity disorder, incidences of suicide attempts were up to 20 times more likely than in the average person. This is from a different study. None of these figures include people successful in suicide attempts, just ones alive to respond to the survey. Transgender violence also caused many transgender individuals to not complete high school. Transgender students were significantly more likely to report feeling unsafe at school because of their sexual or gender orientation than lesbian, gay, or bisexual students. 76.3% for trans students, over 3 in 4, and the comparatively low rate of 52.9% for lesbian, gay, or bisexual students, which is still over half of the students who fall under that category. In one study of transgender individuals that experienced in-school gender-based violence, 14.8% reported the gender-based violence they experienced was the main or contributing reason to them not completing high school. This is not just considering ones who didn't complete high school. This is out of all of them that experience in-school gender-based violence. And the problem is that the incidences are rarely reported, likely because of a fear of reporting gender-based violence. Only around 10% of incidences of physical and sexual gender-based violence listed in one study were reported. 8 of those who reported were victims of physical gender-based violence from the police themselves, and 5 were victims of sexual violence by the police. These people went to the police officers to seek help for the things they were going through, and they suffered the same violence at the hands of the police. Without reports and ability to report safely, crimes cannot be prosecuted or considered as happening by law. Therefore, the pattern cannot change and the true scope of the problem cannot be known. Today I discussed how America's high level of gender-based violence against transgender individuals causes frequent suicide attempts, including leaving the living transgender veterans up to 20 times more likely to attempt suicide than the average person. I discussed how the gender-based violence causes a number of transgender individuals to drop out of high school, 14.8% of respondents, and how only about 10% of incidences of sexual and physical gender-based violence are reported, and how individuals who reported these incidences were sometimes victimized by the very people they sought for help. Transgender individuals already undergo significantly greater stress simply from being born in a body that does not match their gender. Adding to that overwhelming nightmare with a second one, that of physical and/or sexual violence, causes an untenable state. Acceptance is the only cure. Thank you for coming here to listen to this speech, and have a lovely day.